This week on Big Red's Cooking, we make tomato soup. Hi, and welcome back to Big Red's Cooking. As always, I'm your host, Big Red. I hope everyone's had a great start to the year. 2020 is behind us, 2021 is here. Now, I do have to start this one on a little bit more of a serious note. I'm dedicating this video to Andrea and her 6 children. Andrea is the wife of my cousin Jarrett, who passed away recently and unexpectedly. I actually attended his funeral today, so I'm feeling that for sure. I got to chat with Andrea. She's a wonderful mom and a great person, and I've known her for a long time. I was chatting with her today, and she talked about how much she loved my videos. She asked why I hadn't done one in a while. So I'm dedicating this one to you, Andrea. I hope this one helps you feel a little better, and maybe you'll make this soup for you and your kids someday. If you have a moment, just think about him. Jarrett was a veteran. He was an important part of the community, and he was just an all-around great guy. He was like a little kid brother to me. I literally grew up right next door to him. But you're not here to hear that. So today, what I'm actually going to be making, I'm going to be making a tomato soup for you guys. I don't know about you, I grew up, tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwich was a great lunchtime meal. I love it for supper as well. And it's really simple, sort of just go to the shelf and grab that can of tomato soup. But again, this is something that's really, really easy to make for yourself. So, why don't we just jump on over to my workbench and we'll see it over there. There's not much to this one. Alright, so to get started, I'm actually going to render off a little bit of salt pork. Just like I always say in my recipes, I'll have this all typed up and you'll be able to find it on my website, bigredscooking.ca. And don't feel like you have to use salt pork. If you've been watching my videos, you know that I talk about focusing on what I'm doing, not what I'm doing it with. So at the end of the day, really what's most important is that you have a bit of fat in the bottom of your pot, not the kind of fat that it is. Now, I personally love the extra flavor that the salt pork gives, but if you don't want to use salt pork, you want to use butter, feel free, a little bit of olive oil, vegetable oil, whatever, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to turn that on a real low sort of temperature. I'm just going to let that render out. I don't want to sort of get it all smoking hot and things like that. I want to allow that fat just to melt slowly so I can pull that fat out. So while that's rendering away, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I got a carrot here, some celery, and an onion. I'm going to go ahead and get that diced up there now. Okay, so we can see our pork fat is melting down quite nicely here now. So if those of you who are familiar with Newfoundland cuisine, or if you're from Newfoundland, you're all too familiar with scruncheons. I'll probably end up nibbling on a few of these afterwards. But we don't want that heat up too high. We notice there's not a lot of smoke coming off this. And we're just trying to melt this down so we have some fat to be able to cook our vegetables into. So our pork fat pieces are pretty much done here now. We've got a fair amount of oil in the bottom of the pan, or more than enough to get started with. Get those pulled out. And then go ahead and we've got our mirepoix here. So we've got that mixture of that carrot, onion, and celery. I'm going to go ahead and just add it right on into our pot. And what we want to do is we want to sweat off this vegetable. So it's sizzling pretty good there now, but it's going to, those vegetables will cool off that pot in no time at all. And we just want to try and cook these without coloring them too much. We just want to get them nice and soft. Alright, so our veggies are looking nice and sort of soft in there now. some of the colors come on the onion. So what I'm going to do next, I'm actually going to make a bit of a roux. So what I've got here is about 2 tablespoons of flour. I'm just going to go ahead and dump that right down to the bottom. We're going to give that a little bit of a stir around. Now if it ends up looking a little dry like mine does, what you can do is go ahead and add just a small bit of oil. Because really with the roux, what we want is equal parts fat and flour. And we want that fat to be able to cook that flour out a little bit and absorb it. And it's going to actually end up blending into our liquid much better. And it's going to give us a little bit of body to our soup. It's going to add a little, a little bit more texture so it won't be so thin. So once that roux is all fully incorporated in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add my stock. Now again, this is some of my homemade turkey stock. Feel free to use some homemade chicken stock, homemade stock of any sort. What you want is a fairly light stock. If you're a vegetarian, go ahead and use vegetable stock. I make this one all the time with vegetable stocks when I have those available. Given that I'm using salt pork in here, didn't really feel the need though to add a vegetable stock. So give that a little good stir and try and incorporate that flour into it. And then I've got 1 large can of diced tomatoes. I'm going to go ahead and add that in. And now we're just going to let this simmer for about an hour. And what we want, that's going to let it reduce down a little bit. That's going to let those vegetables finish cooking and get really super soft and tender. Because what we're going to do in the end is we're going to puree this all down so we get a really nice smooth tomato soup. Now, there's one other thing that we've got to do. So what we have here, we're putting together what's called a sachet. So we've got a bay leaf, some whole cloves, some whole peppercorns, and a little pinch of thyme sitting on top of some cheesecloth. So I'm just actually going to take this, pull it all together. And that's fine, let that bay leaf break up a little bit in there. And we're just going to sort of tie this together with a piece of butcher's twine. And then this is going to go into our soup just like a tea bag. And what this is going to allow us to do then is to fish out all that afterwards. So we can get all that flavor into it, but we don't have to worry about trying to dig out bay leaves or cloves or anything like that. Because we want the flavor, but we don't want the leftovers. So by just dropping that down in off a piece of butcher's twine, like I say, we can take that out afterwards. And we'll have no worries about finding it. So we're going to go ahead and let this simmer for about an hour. We'll come back in an hour's time or so and we'll check on our soup. We may check on it before that. So I'm really happy with how this soup is looking. It's been simmering for about an hour. So what I'm going to do before I do anything else, I'm actually going to remove my sachet. Now, if you don't actually have cheesecloth at home, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. You can go ahead and use a piece of, if you've got a coffee filter works great. Or something like that. Now cheesecloth, I buy this at Dollarama or the local dollar store there, and it's cheap and it's a great item to have in your kitchen anyhow. So it's something you might want to think about getting. So our last thing we've got to do now is we want this to be a really nice smooth soup. And this is going to be very reminiscent to something you get out of a can. Just way more flavor to it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to scoop out all my vegetables and I'm going to give them a little blend in the mixer here. Now, when you're blending anything hot like this, what it's going to do is going to produce a lot of steam. So I always recommend making sure you've got a good cloth that you can hold over the top. Something that's going to act as a protector. So if you use your bare hand on this, you're very likely to get burned. So be extra careful. And usually I just give it a couple little pulses so that the steam, some of that steam can escape. When water converts to steam, it actually expands to 1,600 times its volume. So I'm seeing people not being careful and blow the top right off their mixer, or not their mixer, their blender. So be really careful when you're doing this. Okay, so now that that's mostly blended down, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pour some of my soup in there while it's blending through the top, just to give it a little bit extra liquid, just to get that nice little bit extra smoothness to it. With that all blended up, what I'm going to do is I'll add it right back into our pot. And we just got to adjust for seasoning. Doesn't that just look fantastic? So let's give this a little taste. Definitely gonna need a bit of salt. But oh. Oh, fantastic. So when we get a bowl of this, we'll move on over to the counter and we'll have a little chat over there. So you can see there's not much to that tomato soup, is there really? Grab a few vegetables, you know, throw in your tomatoes in your stock, let it simmer out, and blend it up. Doesn't that just look fantastic? Oh, the smell is so wonderful. Let's give this a little taste. Way better than anything you're going to get out of a can. You know, go back and look at that grilled cheese recipe of mine. Grilled cheese and tomato soup, fantastic. You know, what a great meal that is. This freezes really well as well. So if you want to do this in larger amounts, you can go ahead and break it down in smaller containers, freeze it for yourself, and then you got tomato soup. You know, so take the time, make some of these recipes yourself. You're going to get so much more enjoyment out of it than you will opening up a can. You know, so I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a little something. I'm hoping to get back really a little bit more regularly. You know, I took a bit of a break for Christmas. I've been doing some planning out. I'm probably going to be focusing on some baking recipes coming up soon. So keep tuned for those. You know, as always, if you haven't done so, please hit that share button, that like button, that subscribe button. It really sort of helps me as I'm trying to build my audience. You know, give me some feedback. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd love to see me do again. Keep eating some great food and keep coming back for more. Bye for now.